I want to start this video off today by giving a movie review of a documentary I watched recently that I consider to be pretty solar punk. The movie was called Spaceship Earth, and it was about the people who built Biosphere 2. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is. It's really cool. The Biosphere, Biodome kind of idea that was in the early 90s, I think is when it ended. I remember it as a kid hearing about it. And essentially all I remember is that it was a failure. And that's all anybody ever talked about, is how it was a failure. And that's not fair. Hey, go back and watch the video. I would not consider it a failure at all. And it was very much a media twist, as we know how that can be. The movie focused on the group of people and who they were and how they all came together. And that's what totally blew my mind. They were totally revolved around Buckminster Fuller, and that's why we're here with the street art that I found of Buckminster Fuller. They actually built geodesic domes on a farm that they had made like a homestead kind of DIY plot land. And what was really cool about them is they were a bunch of theater kids. There was a bunch of artsy people, and they would perform. And they had something called the Theater of All Possibilities. How solar punk is that? Like, just ideas and solutions of a future better world. And they would get together and act out these really cool, weird, artsy, scientific things. And then they started going around on like a big tour bus that they modded, a school bus, just doing very, very hippie stuff and going around and acting and making little money and stuff like that. And eventually that's where they bought their farm, and that's how they learned DIY management and building and all kinds of hands-on learning and team project building. And it just kind of emerged with them coming together and seeing who was good at what and learning as you go and not being afraid to fail. Eventually they got bored with that, and they wanted to build a ship. And they welded together a metal ship without knowing anything about welding and knowing anything about shipbuilding, knowing anything about anything. They were not going to let themselves stop themselves on great adventures of the world. They actually got on the ship and it floated, it sailed, and they went all around the world. They literally sailed for years to every single continent on this planet. They performed theater on every single continent on this planet. And that's when they first started seeing all the different biomes of Earth, all the different diversity and climates and worldviews of people. And they just saw how free they were and how they could just shift between different cultures and how culture was just a program. It was only after they traveled the whole world that they understood the importance of all life on Earth. And that's when they came up with this idea of a Pueblo spaceship, or something like that is what they called it. And it was going to be a completely enclosed circular biome that would be out in space. And it would just be like this real hippie trippy kind of thing where it was just like a glass dome sphere that just had everything enclosed. And that was really cool. But they wanted to bring that down to Earth. And they said, how could we do this in real life? How could we do this here on Earth? That's where they did. They met some people that could finance it, and they built this thing and yada yada yada, and it went all into it. They actually brought in like living coral reefs. They brought in all these things from all around the world and had different sections, and it was just totally astounding. One of the reasons why I think we need to try this again today is there's many technological differences. This happened in the 70s, I believe, when they started, and they weren't using any solar power for this. They were just farming from the natural sunlight, and they started to like lose food production in the winter and things like that. The oxygen level was not so great, and what they found out later that they don't cover in the movie is that the concrete was actually still being cured and fixing and sucking out of the oxygen from there. So that's why they all kind of like started going crazy and stuff like that. But I thought this was totally amazing. I thought this was so cool and so inspiring how they wanted to be this whole new field of biospherics, and they were going to be biospherians, just like astronauts or aquanauts or something like that. They really believed that they were charting a whole new form of sustainable enclosed science biomes that were engineered biomes, and biospherics was going to be a new field of science, a new field of research. That's why I totally don't think this is a failure. I don't understand how anybody could consider this a failure when they were groundbreakers, they were trailblazers, they learned more than anybody had ever done in the past and started something brand new. I would give anything to go and live and do something like this. This sounds so amazing. Which gets to my next point. You can go and do stuff like this, similar to this. The Biosphere 2 still exists out in the desert. I think it's run by the university that's out there. But my friend Elliot Roth, you should look him up. He started a company called Spira, is trying to grow food for the whole world and all these different things, using it to dye textiles and stuff. He just went and lived on top of a volcano with like 5 or 6 other scientists in a totally enclosed, kind of like a biosphere system, where they had to monitor all their resources and inputs, outputs. And he had to design science projects while up there and pretend like they were on the moon. That's what it was all about. It's a lunar excursion analog, to where they have to pretend like their building structures are on the moon, and like their spacesuits, and when they go outside they have to go and collect rocks and spacesuits and all this really cool things. You can sign up for the project as well. I'm considering doing it because this seems like so cool. This seems like something I would dedicate my life to doing, of being adventurous, being scientific, being just everything, looking at the world in a different way, and climbing to tops of mountains. This seems so cool. So I encourage you to look up Biosphere, watch this movie, Spaceship Earth, and also look up Elliot Roth, and I'll link you to his experiences on there. Solar Punk out.